This is Inspirational Women, a weekly series shining the spotlight on female trailblazers making a true difference in our community. Once again, here is Kate Daniels.
October is also Domestic Violence Awareness Month, not to be confused with it being the only time we think about or work to counteract domestic violence. It's a time we dedicate for heightened awareness. And I'm pleased to have Helen Winslow Black join us to share some important insights about the subject as we discuss her current book, 7 Blackbirds, a work of fiction that really provides a solid story of the effects of domestic violence and the reasons we need to be open, honest, and talk about it. Helen Winslow Black, good morning. I'm so grateful that we get a chance to connect once again.
Good morning, Kate. I'm so pleased that we do, yes.
And to talk about your wonderful gift of writing, of storytelling. So we get a chance during it's a tough subject, domestic violence. This is Domestic Violence Awareness Month, and here, your book, 7 Blackbirds, gives us a chance to have a really important look into a young woman who is on the receiving end of that and really takes us through her life and her experiences, giving us a chance to really have an important conversation about that very terrible situation that exists in our world, domestic violence. And here you are writing wonderfully, if one can use that word, but really being able to tell the story so well. And the reviews really attest to the same thing, that you have really handled the topic, the subject so well and told it, in such a even way so that it's not preachy or schmaltzy, that it's just, here's the story, here's the reality.
Here's the story. Yes. Yeah. Thank you, Kate. Thank you, Kate. It is a tough subject. And I think that if you approach a difficult subject like this in the right way, then, as you said, without a pre-existing agenda, without a preaching or teaching, because that's not literature, that's, propaganda in a way, or journalism, for example. If you approach it in the right way, you really can elevate the conversation and reach out and touch people who might be a little nervous to address it.
Mm-hmm. And you say that so well, because as you said that, I was thinking, yes, that is a way to have the conversation. You become too teachy preachy and people tune out. Don't want to hear that. No, it just sends up red flags and builds walls. So in this way of just, here's the story. I'm sharing the experience of what in essence is one woman's journey, including family, including a child, really is an important part of the dynamics because, of course, children are so deeply impacted when domestic violence is part of their family life situation.
Yes, that's really true. And for a book like this to be powerful and meaningful, you have to be able to step into the character's shoes, and you have to be able to walk along through the story with the character, because that grounds you as a reader with a painful topic like this. It's got to be very real. You have to put, like, I think one reviewer said, she put me in the room and let me make my own decisions about what was going on. That is what literature is intended to do. So that's how you have to craft a narrative like that in order for it to be meaningful. And you bring up children, and yes, there are so many difficult things for a woman who finds herself in an atmosphere of domestic violence. And it is just absolutely exponentially, compounded when there are also children present in the home. And that's what's happening with Kim in this story. She's a 20-something young woman who is surprised and shocked to find herself in an abusive situation at a very vulnerable point in her life after she's just had a baby. And I think the presence of children in the home can sometimes prevent a woman from speaking up or reaching out. But ultimately, Kate, I think the presence of children in the home is exactly what finally does spur a mother to step up and do something about it, to gather her courage and say, I really have to do something about this because it's not just about me, it's about the kids.
And so much about the kids because they are just in these formative years, and to be bearing witness. Even here we have an infant. That infant is of course absorbing that energy. I think there's in the past I could remember my mother saying, "Oh, they're just kids, they don't understand." No, I think they understand even more so. We have learned, we know now the impact that sort of violence in the home, violence in a community, in a war zone. We know it impacts the psyche, it impacts the life of that child. So here in that home, it is then I can feel the responsibility the parent feels like, okay, it's not just me who's suffering now. I have these other, or at least an infant impacted.
It impacts their whole future. It impacts their whole future. You are so right. And even if they are not directly abused themselves, and even if they're not actually witnessing one parent abuse the other, they're absorbing that atmosphere. I think you use that phrase. That is absolutely right. And it will damage them. It will damage them. It will damage their brain. It will damage their development. It will damage their emotional growth. And really, so the only way to prevent this from carrying on from generation to generation is to address that now and get the child and the children and the abused parent out of that situation. Otherwise, it's just going to be a repetitive cycle. They will be stunted in their emotional, in their soul, in their growth for the rest of their lives. So in a way, when a woman takes those steps to reach out and say, break the secrecy and the shame and say, something's going on, I need some help. And when she does that, she's not only starting herself on the road to recovery, but she's helping her children and she's preventing it from happening to them in the future.
Yes. It's such an important, critical thing to do is if not thinking of yourself, it's like, well, I chose this, I need to stay. But even then, a woman should not feel like she has to stay. There is no reason, even when there is that feeling like, well, I took this vow, I need to honor it. No, they obviously are not honoring. When someone is being violent to you, that breaks all contracts, I think.
It absolutely breaks all contracts. It breaks the spiritual contract for sure. That isn't a relationship. When one person is abusing another, that's just treating that person like an object and a worthless one to boot. So that's not about love. It's not a relationship. It's about control. And women are culturally raised, even in this day and age, I feel like some of that is nature and some of it is cultural, influence, that they are raised to fix these problems themselves, especially those that occur within the own four walls of their home. So yes, they will stay, they will minimize, they will make excuses, they'll say, I can fix this, they'll be the mediators, the peacemakers. The longer you stay in a situation like that, the more time the abuser has to wear you down to a nubbin and make you believe that this is your fault and you're worthless.
Yes.
That's what keeps women from reaching out. Not just, oh, I can fix this. What will my friends say? I can fix this. It's not that bad. Not just that, but really internalizing this destructive message that I'm worthless, so it doesn't matter anyway.
Yes. That is criminal, to put that on to another human being, to make them, ultimately, they're badgered enough to then believe that they're worthless, or they must be the reason for all this. And the psychology of the abuser is a whole other situation. But here, what we're concerned about is the person being abused. Typically, it's the woman. That's the majority of cases. And to realize that it has nothing to do with them, that they are a perfectly beautiful, wonderful human being.
We're all born that way. We are that way. And the only way that I think that you could ever believe anything else is that if someone else so psychologically isolates you and sucks all the oxygen out of the room so that somehow you believe this.
Yeah.
And the only way out of that is to, I don't know, punch your hand through that invisible wall and reach out. And it's difficult for somebody in that position to do on their own, but very often at some point, I hate the word victim, but it's like the victim might pick up a phone to a hotline, for example, to just kind of talk to somebody and get a different perspective. And then that's what Kim does in this book. At a certain point, if you remember, she this is before cell phones. And so she goes to phone booth at a distance from her home, and places this phone call and says, listen, this just happened and I wanted to talk to somebody. My husband just like hit me. And I think that's very, very common, that the first person somebody might reach out to would be an anonymous person at the other end of the phone, because maybe they're afraid to tell their mother or their sister or their best friend at first. So, those really only, I think, came into existence, I believe, in like 1987. The National Domestic Violence Hotline was established by President Clinton did that. And so since then, that's been a resource that people can use, and is often the first one that people turn to.
And thank goodness there is that kind of resource, because, as you said, reaching out to a family member, to a friend, is really frightening for various kinds of reasons, of being told, oh, you're imagining it, just suck it up, or, you need to get out of there now. Well, some of that, maybe you can just walk away immediately, but sometimes a woman can't, especially if there are children and you have to plan to gather this together and know where you can go.
Right. It's tricky. It's tricky, especially in a situation of abuse. I remember in 7 Blackbirds, I think Kim waited until she was right about to go out of town, ostensibly to, quote unquote, visit her mother with the baby. She waited until right that moment for her lawyer to file the papers and serve her husband. She was married, so she did have to go through the legal divorce, because she was afraid of what would happen if he was served and she was still in town.
Sure. And that's the thing. Too often, the perpetrator is such a control freak, or and can really obviously be violent, because there is, well, in Kim's case, there's the punching. Sometimes they do it in such a way that it's still a punch, but where it won't be visible to the public. But they're conniving and liars. So, it's understandable to have to also kind of play that way and plot your time.
Yes, very carefully, I think. And she did get out of that situation very early on in the book. I just want to reassure people who haven't read it yet. I wanted to get her out of that situation, because the focus, Kate, was on her recovery. Actually, on 2 things. I wanted to chart the course, both of her outward journey, that would be through the legal system, which, of course, you have to go through, even if you're not married to your partner, but you have children, right? Chart her course through the labyrinthine sausage grinder known as the legal system, while at the same time charting her course in the inner world, which would be her emotional recovery from the trauma of abuse. And both of those journeys are happening simultaneously. They're kind of braided together and twinned. And when she turns the corner of emotional recovery, I think that's when the legal process really starts to pick up and move along, because it was taking a long time. And that happened, I believe. There was a turn. Can I tell you about the title? Oh, yes.
Yes. Okay.
Yes, because it falls into this. The things really started to move for her in both her inner world and the outer world when she hit a certain turning point, which was she finally came up and out with the worst of her abuse secrets of all, which she hadn't told to anybody, not her mother, not her lawyer, not anybody. She finally came up and out with that after she's been reading this nursery rhyme to her baby over and over again. It's called Seven Blackbirds in a Tree. It's a counting rhyme. And the last line is, seven for a secret never to be told. And at a certain point, and that this is where timing is everything when it comes to abuse recovery. At a certain point, that line, seven for a secret never to be told, really hits home with her. And she realizes that she has to unburden herself of this secret. And she blurts it out to her best friend. And now that she has acknowledged all of the secrets, all of the emotional trauma, that's when things really start to move for her. And that's why I call the book Seven Blackbirds, because it represents that transformational, pivotal moment
Yes.
in the life of somebody, male or female, old or young, who is going along this journey.
And that is really beautiful, because I think that's the way things work in life. It's when we finally let go of something, it's like we are at the dam holding back the water. Yes. But once we say, there's this thing, it's a revelation.
Yes.
It then lets everything else go into motion, right? So that's life.
Bingo.
Yeah.
Bingo. That's in every department of life, in every area of life. That's how things work. And the timing, it's all a mystery, but timing is really important. There are times when, I raised 5 children, and you're trying to kind of impart a lesson to them, and they're just not picking up on it. And then, maybe a year later, it's like a light bulb goes on in their head, and they say, remember, I get it now. And so timing is a beautiful mystery.
Yes.
In life. And we can only hope that the right things happen to people at the right time, so that they can break down that's a beautiful metaphor, that a dam, breach that dam, and then make forward progress.
Yes. And so that really gets underscored in the book. And so I was thinking about how you were writing and having these parallel streams going on. But was that maybe somewhat subconscious as you were writing the story, or did you actually have some idea in mind?
Well, I think that you're talking about the way that she has a lot of memories and goes back to earlier phases of her life and remembers her father, who is no longer on the earth. And she's like, I wish I could talk to him now, and this and that and the other. I think when you are going through recovery from emotional trauma, what you're actually doing is you're bringing the past up into your present in order to work it through, and then let it go. And that's why somebody in the position that Kim is in, emotionally, will have flashbacks and memories and stuff like that, because that is the present moment for her. The past is the present, and it must be the present to be worked through and then let go. And so I think that speaks kind of really truly to healing from emotional trauma.
Yes. So the book feels so authentic. Was it a challenge to really get that authenticity? Did you have experiences of, say, doing volunteer work at women's shelters, or have any kind of experience of that?
Well, so I would say that my expertise is both professional and personal. So my professional expertise is grounded in law studies that focused on family law, as well as Native American law, federal Indian law. And interestingly enough, before that, I did work for a time in the field of what was then known as mental retardation. So you could say that my vocation is to help people speak up for themselves, people who can't, are unable to, find it difficult or scary, or are prevented from that. So when you combine that with the expertise that's born of years and years and years, I'm not going to say how old I am. My oldest child is 31, if that means anything. But anyways, years and years of experience, both direct, indirect, and anecdotal. Because Kate, I have turned out to be the kind of person that strangers tell their stories to in public. The airplane and train stations, in lines waiting for something, in coffee shops. People tell me their stories. And I hope I'm not going off on too much of a tangent here, but people tell me their stories. And I think when you combine all of that experience and expertise, I think it's really powerful. And, as far as I'm concerned, anyone can draft and finalize and file a motion in a court of law, but I don't know how to say this, it sounds funny. The only person who can write Helen Black's books is Helen Black. And so I have been told over and over again that my stories are so real. And I take that as a real compliment, because I draw on all of that and I process it and I write it out, partly because I want to understand it. And as we were talking about at the beginning of this conversation, I really ground my characters in place and time. A sense of place is so important, and the details, and that the characters are really fully fleshed, because if it ain't real, people are just going to toss it aside and go play pickleball or, whatever.
Right. Yes. Well, so you were thinking it was going on a tangent to say, how people feel they can just tell you their stories. That's where I think that authenticity comes from. There are parts of all of that probably just live in you, and they come out at the appropriate time to fit into the story to make it real.
Absolutely. It's creation. It's so fun to participate in. You get your side. I put on classical music and I close the door to my room and say, don't bother me. and I, say I need to write this scene. It's so fulfilling to really, it just comes right from my heart. Comes right from my heart. All of these stories that people have shared with me, that's a gift. And then you extrapolate from that, right? Sure. Like, I'm a trained professional here. I can analogize and extrapolate and invent and connect things up. And it's really quite a pleasure. It sounds funny to say that with regard perhaps to some parts of this book, which are quite painful and difficult, but there are also funny parts. But to be able to do that is so fulfilling that I'm grateful for that.
And so we, in turn, can be feeling gratitude as well, because we get to experience vicariously, I hope. But maybe there is someone who is going through a really turbulent time in a relationship. This can give them that hope. This can give them a way to see their way out of it. It can provide the healing.
I hope so. That's my fervent wish. And, at least it can open eyes and raise awareness, because even if you haven't experienced this directly, you might know somebody who has. And, I once had a time in my life, I was going through a difficult time with regard to a particular topic. And I walked into the library with a friend. She turned her head, looked at the bookcase, saw the title of the book, pulled it out, and just handed it to me. And it directly addressed what was going on in my life at the time. And I was like, Whoa.
Yeah.
So, books are little conversation starters. They're candles. When you open up a book, it comes to life. And who knows what could happen from there. At least you're enlarging your experience, and you're learning and growing. That's really, I think, why we read, especially fiction. We want to learn and grow, and novels, help us do that. They enlarge our world.
Exactly, yes. And this is part of the world that we need to be aware of because sadly, tragically, this is what exists for too many people in our world, and it needs to end. And the way to end it is to have better awareness and know what kind of recourse we have.
Absolutely. Society needs to heal in so many ways. And this is something that, similar to what we were saying before, it's got to come up and out and be seen and recognized and brought into in order to be dealt with. So, I mean, I just hope that this book is a small contribution to raising that awareness.
Yes. Well, I'm going to say I believe that it is. And of course, it's available through all of our favorite book sources, and especially through our brick and mortar stores, right?
Yes, absolutely, Kate. As an indie author, I like to promote independent bookstores. So if you have a favorite brick and mortar independent bookstore that you patronize, you can go ask them to order you a copy. And there's also, I believe, as far as online platforms go, I think that bookshop.org is a collection of independent bookshops. So I would kind of push those. But yes, it's available wherever books are sold.
And then for more information, and some of this can be gleaned from there, is ways to follow you and get more information about what you're up to.
Well, I love to interact with readers. That's why I write. So I have a website, HelenWinslowBlack.com. So that's HelenWinslow Black.com, HelenWinslowBlack.com, and you can find out all about Seven Blackbirds and the companion volume, Songs My Mother Taught Me, which I published previously. And you can also email me on that website by following the little instructions on the contact page. I also have a Facebook page, Helen Winslow Black Author. Please go to my website. I would love to hear from you.
And that piece of it for sure makes such sense with what you shared with us during the conversation, Helen, is that people like to open up and tell you stories. So making connection with you just makes perfect sense. And I'm glad you extend that invitation.
Thanks, Kate. This has been such a pleasure. I just wish we could have coffee tomorrow, and just hang out. I love talking with you.
Well, likewise, I enjoy speaking with you. So one of these days we'll make that happen. We'll make a coffee happen.
And I want all of your listeners to remember that this is October, and October is National Domestic Violence Awareness Month. So that's, it's a little bit more significant than like Pistachio Ice Cream Month or whatever, and that awareness of these kinds of things in our society, raising awareness, can only be a good thing and a beneficial thing. So thank you for that, Kate.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you for adding that extra emphasis, underscoring it for us, Helen. I appreciate it, as I appreciate you. So thank you for being with us today.
Thanks, Kate.
Thank you for being here this morning to meet these special guests with their important and timely information. Please check the station's websites for the podcasts for more information about these guests, and please share the stories with your family and friends. I'm Kate Daniels. If you'd like to connect with me, simply send me an email, katedaniels@hubbardradio.com. I hope you make time today to enjoy some wonderful autumn activity. Maybe walk through some crunchy autumn leaves and just simply savor the day.
Thank you for listening to Inspirational Women. Tune in every Sunday morning at this time to hear about those truly empowering the Northwest community, all for the greater good. Sunday Morning Magazine and Inspirational Women are a public service of Hubbard Radio Seattle.